The path that leadeth on is lighted by one fire. The light of daring burning in the heart. The more one dares, the more he shall obtain. Welcome to the 4th episode in this series on awakening the chakras with Way of the Yogi. Thank you everyone for keeping up with the series and all the positive comments. Especially from those who are saying it's just making so much sense to you and really contributing to your own progression and seeing the benefits of certain practices and how understanding what's being discussed here is really helping you. That's exactly why I make these videos, to support a wide variety of information that's often misunderstood in several ways in order to help those who are seeking it and seeking to make sense of all this. So thank you for your patience waiting for each episode. If I was able to pause time and make them all at once I would, but I'm only human and I'm working on these every week. They take time, especially because for each episode I could easily make them 3 hours long, but that's not ideal. I have to wisely choose what the best information is to include in each video in order to make it effective but also concise. With that said, you are absolutely free to ask me any question about the other chakras and any other kind of related topic outside of what I'm including in this series. You can leave a comment if you want, but if you want a deeper and more elaborate answer, you can ask me directly. So make sure you're subscribed and click the bell icon so you're notified every time I post a new video, and let's get into it. So this episode will cover the solar plexus, Manipura chakra, the church of Pergamus located in the pancreas gland or is also sometimes associated with the kidneys. Manipura in Sanskrit literally means city of jewels. Hence, to master this chakra is also to master how to manifest things in your life, whether it's money, relationships, academic work, or most importantly spiritual enlightenment, which are the real jewels of course as opposed to material jewels. So all of the popular spiritual communities such as the law of attraction, who are trying to figure out how to get things done and manifest whatever they want, are actually working within or trying to figure out the dimension of this Manipura chakra. Another couple of interesting abilities that are naturally developed here are telepathy and other psychic phenomena, and also perfect health and longevity. More on these later. This chakra is the color yellow like gold and also like the sun and fire, and it is the highest and most superior chakra of the 3 lower inferior chakras. From here on out we'll be very much diving into the realms of enlightenment in various levels and also going into understanding how certain spiritual abilities such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience naturally occur. This solar plexus chakra is the element of fire and is also intimately tied to our heart chakra. The heart chakra is commonly known as the element of air. So these chakras actually work together because fire needs air to be maintained. But we also commonly relate fire to the heart, and even seeing depictions of Jesus's heart on fire representing his love for God and his burning passion for God. So where does this fire come from if the heart is the element of air? Well, it first comes from our solar plexus chakra, which is the chakra of desire, and these flames of desire rise up into the heart where there's air and space for that fire to exist. Fire rises. So we can say that the solar plexus is desire and the heart is where the desire is transformed into love, manifesting our desires more intensely, whether it's spiritual desires or material desires. So as you can see by the quote by Helena Blavatsky at the start of the episode, she's saying that the more we desire awakening and act on that desire through will and intent, the more we shall receive awakening, and as we'll see, the solar plexus is all about will and intent. It's quite nice how she used the word daring, which is essentially a combination of desire and willpower. We'll see more on this with the heart chakra episode, and also briefly link the heart and the solar plexus to the root and sacral chakras. Those first 2 chakras are sort of the deep, gross, furnace laboratories down under where we need to do all of that ego work down deep in the earth of the root chakra, the element of earth, and by doing work down there in the hot furnaces with all those flames of passion and primal energy that creates the heat to ignite our solar plexus into fire. So the element of earth from the root chakra provides the wood and coals for the fire, and the sacral chakra provides the crude oil to amplify the heats greatly with its primal forces. That's one way you can see it, and it's quite amazing right how we progress in this series. We can see the relationships between these centers in the energetic anatomy of our human spirit. And by contemplating them, so many layers of ourselves can be understood and interconnected. So with the solar plexus chakra being like a sun, this center of intelligence is like our awareness. The light of our awareness almost, but not the light of pure consciousness, because remember, this is a lower chakra, and it is, especially when we're novices, the awareness of our ego. It is our most basic sense of self, and as a result, it is where personality resides too. It's our most efficient way of interacting with the physical world, not just through primal animal ways like the root chakra, nor being obsessed with the senses like the sacral, but using both of those and synthesizing them into your willpower as an ego that desires things as a character in this virtual environment of physical life. So the spiritual question of this chakra is, what do you do with these powers and intelligences of life that we saw in the root and sacral chakra? Since this solar plexus governs those chakras that have to do with our emotions and physical life, well, it is up to your decisions and choices, which are created in the seat of our sense of self within the solar plexus. It is where we form intentions and also carry them out, whether unconsciously or consciously. So this is your everyday sense of self, just as how you're listening to and watching this video now. It's that sense of continual existence and the identity of who you call and what you believe you are, since you remember yourself and the accumulation of your memories in your life, the person you call you apparently are right now, which is a spiritual seeker, one who doesn't know the mysteries of the universe, the actor or actress in this divine comedy of life, the you who is living behind a veil, living behind a mask of a chosen ego that you formed. This is not a bad thing. This is a necessary part of our nature, the human experience, and an essential part of the rainbow of chakras in order to be a complete human being. But many are stuck at, or below, and at the mercy of this chakra, which is why there's so much focus on understanding the ego throughout many spiritual teachings, and why things like law of attraction are so popular, because we're not awakened in this chakra. Now, of course, we have another sense of self that is not the ego. Our sense of inner divinity, our divine spark, our consciousness, but this is more to do with the higher chakras, which we'll see in the next episodes. And it's also why, in a way, this chakra, you could say, is half lower and also half higher. We're reaching that threshold into higher consciousness, meaning that if we're stuck in the root or sacral chakra, it's because we are willing with certain lower intentions to negatively feed those lower chakras. The solar plexus is where we are choosing to be a certain way, whether positively or negatively. Obviously, here our intention is to change all that willpower into positive intention in almost every aspect of our life radically. Hence, being stuck in the root or sacral chakra means that we are being unconsciously controlled by our unconscious desires, so we are always manifesting things. The question is, what exactly? I'd say that this chakra is basically a turning point of energy, and along the process of awakening Kundalini, it's really this center where most of humanity needs to shift, when there will eventually be some tipping point in the course of humanity's future. However that will happen, there will be a lot of energies and struggles between the solar plexus and heart center. We either transcend the solar plexus through the heart, or stay living in the insanities and obsessions of the ego, toying around with the root and sacral chakra, manifesting all these lower realities that are always seen on the news. So as we explored in the first episode, all our chakras are currently overtaken by darkness, by the ego, and all of the philosophical arguments about whether we have free will or not are just once again two sides of a coin that both have valid realities, meaning those stuck in the first two chakras have little to no free will in their lives. They are simply determined by the psychological makeup of their ego. Or you could also say their karma, which is just unconsciously, mechanically fulfilling or trying to fulfill its desires without any involvement of higher consciousness or higher awareness. This is why some teachings correctly say, karma is transcended when you become fully aware and understand it, because once you become aware of it and understand it, you have the choice, you have the free will to no longer go into that direction. If you don't fully understand it, you'll still be at the mercy of it. We're slaves to desire, fear, fearful beliefs, identifications, addictions, and obsessions. We readily react or become offended or form opinions that we're willing to defend immediately when we feel attacked, or every time we unconsciously react to a situation impulsively. We are not making a choice to do that in those moments. We're living purely from reaction instead of a clear conscious response. This is how we stay unaware and unawakened in the solar plexus, living from beliefs that we should be or react or act in a certain way rather than really consciously thinking and contemplating about our life. So accordingly, with balancing this center, we start to become self-responsible people. Not responsible in the sense that you do your chores in your house or do good in your job. Material things like that will naturally happen. But more fundamentally, you become energetically responsible for how your inner state is, and that is far more important than being a domestically responsible person in society. Because to become responsible in this way, spiritually material, responsibility will happen naturally. It will manifest on all physical, social, financial relationship levels. As within, so without. So there's no need to try to be responsible in physical life. Just be responsible from within your own spirituality, from within your own inner world, and everything else will flow naturally. So similarly, in some people who are developed in this chakra, we usually see good traits in their characters and people admire them because they don't act like children who don't understand why they feel certain ways about things, but they take full social and spiritual responsibility for their actions and words, never blaming anyone or anything else for the way their experience has turned out in any given situation. This is self-development, which most of us never actually do. This doesn't necessarily have to be a spiritual thing. It can be purely psychological, and so psychologically most people never grow up. There's nothing worse than a 14-year-old man in a 40-year-old body. Not much good can come from that. Many people are like this, not developed spiritually, and spiritually they're still like children, but not like children in the innocent sense either. I mean, not in the sense of a teenager who's still stuck in the midst of his teenage angst, who never really developed beyond it in order to become an adult on this earth in this experience of humanity while taking full responsibility for it with our given limited situation. By doing all of this, we can see how by transcending our own conditioning and limiting beliefs we accumulate from the world and ourselves, we in turn gain personal power as an individual. Rather than having a false sense of identity and power within the dimension of society and collective consciousness and all of the negative energies that come with this hive mind. And in turn, we become confident, self-reliant, and have self-belief in our own abilities to take life on independently, absolutely not depending on any sort of external guru, spiritual teacher, counselor, therapist, or science. We start to gain personal power. This is what it means to start to generate that power yourself. You understand how to discover something for yourself. If you want to know something, you want to achieve something, you simply put the desire in, and manifestation will turn out in a way in your life that you will move towards a reality where you will discover whatever you want to discover. You don't need a teacher for this. You don't need to seek a guru and spend years going to other countries such as India looking for a guru. You have the guru within you. You have all of the gods, all of the archetypes, all of the spiritual teachers and masters living within your own DNA, and this is something quite related to astral projection as well. If you really want to seek wisdom from divine spiritual masters and things similar to what we saw in the previous episodes, go and explore these other worlds and intend to meet a guru there, a master, and they will teach you much more effectively than we can teach in physical life. And of course, I'm not saying having a teacher or a guru is necessarily bad. I did that too. I longed for a teacher and I found my Gnostic teacher. And I learned so much, but as you progress, there's really only so much you can do externally within the interactions of you and your teacher. Teachers and books and videos only really initially act as a catalyst for you to connect to your own inner teacher, your own inner universal intuition. So by becoming a spiritually responsible person who grows up and sorts their inner baggage out along with their depression, their anger, their dependencies, and attachments, etc., is to slowly walk a path of gradual growth into personal and spiritual freedom, because a spiritually responsible person no longer creates negative ties with people and situations through gossip, insults, drama, negative thoughts, and so on. And as a result, there is so much energy freed up in cutting negative ties. If you don't spread out negative thoughts of other people, eventually people will stop putting out negative thoughts about you too, and these negative thoughts we often attach to them by identifying and reacting towards them emotionally. This limits us in many ways. To just think of one example, how many times have you not done something that you wish you did or knew you should have done, but didn't because of fear or anxiety about what other people would think of you or what they have already said about you, and you made that into your own belief about yourself, even though you knew deep down it was the right thing to do. If you're not doing or saying something just because you're being limited by the beliefs or imposing restricting thoughts of other people that you negatively feel about, then you're limiting yourself. You have a block in your solar plexus because you identify with certain thoughts about yourself. This limits you from living a fuller life. These thoughts that exist within your consciousness can either originally come from you and your own self-pity and self-importance, or they can originally come from negative, unkind, hateful thoughts from other people. And it's not important that other people thought those bad thoughts about you. That's fine. What's the problem with people doing that to us? What's important and significant is that you on some level believed in it. You may not admit that you believe in it, but you can certainly tell if it's limiting you on a deeper level through the way you feel about it and react towards it. If people insult you and you're able to stay in a peaceful state, while you've attained a good certain level of spiritual advancement there, this is a basic ability that we should have. Why should other thoughts affect us like that? Now you can perhaps see how we're slowly understanding how this chakra is linked to telepathy. And just before I go on to that, there's a lot of talk sometimes in esoteric and occult groups and even in normal religious groups about black magic or evil people. Well, what I've just been discussing is quite related to that. We like to think of black magic as people dressed in these black robes doing very evil things, but really black magic in its essence is within each and every one of us. The average person is a black magic magician. Now don't take that out of context and let me put the context for you, because I just want to explain this because I think it's really important and a fundamental part of our reality and understanding how we've come to this point on Earth on a personal and collective level, which you can really understand if you contemplate what I'm saying here. To give the simplest example is that every time we hatefully talk about another human being is a form of black magic. Our thoughts and our words have vibration and power. To think a negative thought about someone else is one thing as well, but to say it with the power of the word is to manipulate reality on some level to your own demise, to your own satisfaction and egoic liking. Language, the word, our ability to speak is a spiritual gift. Just as the Word of God created the world, every time we speak badly about someone to someone else, we are encouraging or manipulating the inner world of that person to see that person that you don't like in a negative light. And that can have potentially devastating effects for the person that you do not like, who is just another soul going through the same suffering karmic cycles as you are. And you know for some reason they've done something to annoy you, and you know you don't like them, but you're adding to the pain by thinking unkindly about them. So as you tell people about this other person that you think is this, and you're gossiping and talking about them badly, all of what you're saying is not necessarily the truth as well, especially when it's coming from a negative place within you. Whatever your ego is perceiving about that person, if you're perceiving it from a negative place, you're probably not seeing the truth at all. The truth can only be perceived from states of higher consciousness such as peace and compassion. Then we can understand and truly empathize with that person and why they've done actions to annoy you, which is usually because they're in pain and they're suffering themselves in some form. You don't know what their experience has been or what they've gone through. So we can also apply this to our unconscious negative manipulation of perceiving reality, commonly seen when people are complaining about the world. People feel so privileged to go around complaining to people and feeling like others must agree with what their version of reality is, as if it's the only truth and nobody questions it. This is how we reverberate a negative hell on this planet, by everyone just complaining and telling each other that this is how the world is, and we're all unconsciously agreeing. As the shaman Don Juan said, the world is such and so, only because we say it is such and so. And if you're a powerful person and everyone listens to you and follows you and you're in a position of power, well, if you're telling everyone negative things about reality, this is black magic too. I know it sounds extreme, but that's simply the nature of humanity today, embedded in the gross darkness of erroneous perceptions of the great reality, cutting us off from the great reality. Let me give you another example of black magic, which is when a parent tells a child he can never do or achieve something with their life. It's when a parent, who is in a position of power over that child, calls their child an idiot, and that child becomes sad, with bad self-esteem, and grows up believing, at least subconsciously, that he is an idiot. That's black magic. Black magic is when you affect other people's lives like this. That parent has changed the course of that child's life forever in a negative way. Unless, of course, that child miraculously finds themselves spiritually and frees himself from those spells that were cast on him unconsciously. But of course most people never even hear about how to do this, or don't even think about it, in just normal conversation as we're doing here. So we can ask all of this and explore all of this ourselves and apply this understanding to analyzing our own life, self-inquiring and asking ourselves things like, as a child, what kind of thoughts did I accumulate about reality when I was growing up? What kind of beliefs did I form about myself? Where did those beliefs and thoughts come from? Did I form them myself? And if so, how did I come to believe that? Or did these beliefs come from my parents or classmates? And if so, why did I take them on so unconsciously? And most importantly, are all of these thoughts and beliefs really true? Do I still act them out to this day? Do they determine my emotions and thoughts about reality 30 or 40 years later? How have they determined my life, health, self-esteem, relationships, circumstances, and my potential for spiritual abilities? If you're not conscious about most of those questions, you have so much wonderful self-discovery to make, and you can certainly devote time for you and finding yourself more through reflecting and contemplating about your life. You can think about them on long walks or meditation or whatever. As long as you have an active interest in it, the answers will come eventually through synchronicity. Synchronicity just means that you are currently holding within your vibration certain interests to discover certain things, and you are okay with the not knowing immediately but are patient, and as you continue life you find the answers in your day-to-day experiences. To gain experience, meaning wisdom. Wisdom is experience, or more precisely, conscious experience, proactively pursuing interests, and those interests are first born in the solar plexus chakra within the realms of our desires from our ego. So as we're going to see now, the ego is not something we need to completely disdain and crucify, but we actually need to use it as well. We use it to manifest many things in life. We use it to make money. We use it to become famous and other materialistic things. So why can't we use it for spiritual progression? The thing is, we can, which we'll see in a little bit. We can also do this sort of life review in a ritualistic way, which in shamanism is called recapitulation, where you intensely reflect with insight on the memories of your life. And then when you fully understand it, you may write those experiences down in a ritualistic way, and then burn what you wrote with the intention to erase and to release all of the baggage and noise and limiting energies of the past. The past literally not actually being real. The past just exists as memories, as energies in the body that we unfortunately identify and take a sense of self in, and thus limits us energetically. So that's one practice I recommend, to recapitulate your life through meditative reflection. And if you had very traumatic experiences that you're particularly still struggling to process, then do this in a ritualistic way. passionately and emotionally writing down everything like a journal, and then when you feel you're ready to let it all go after the reflective meditating process, you may even cry, you then burn it all in a fire as an act of power. I'll leave some shamanistic links in the description below if you're interested in this. To continue more about our self-will in this solar plexus chakra, we begin to contemplate and self-inquire into how we understand what we are actively willing in our lives, or more precisely, why we are doing what we're doing. Or even more precisely, which particular psychological sense of self is making us play out certain actions, feelings, and behaviors, what particular egos are creating movements within the energy of ourselves. For example, we tell ourselves we like to do spiritual practices. Well, who is saying that within ourselves? Why is it saying that? What are the real motives there? Just to be a more spiritual person? Or to genuinely find enlightenment? So this is just one voice that says I want to do this. The problem is there are so many other I's and desires within us that we end up seeking advice saying, how can I devote more time to spiritual practice? I find myself doing other things. Well, this can't be solved with another fancy routine from another life coach who's going to give you a system he's developed. I guarantee that's not the solution. It could work out for a bit because he's more developed. He's mastered this solar plexus chakra more, and it's inspiring to you and he gives you motivation, but take him out of the picture and you'll fall back into your normal old ways. So we need to become self-reliant, and if you really want to know why you procrastinate and why you have multiple conflicting desires and emotions, then you have to look within. You have to meditate, then you'll know directly. Nobody, no book, and no guru can tell you why you're failing in whatever enterprise you're undertaking because you make the mistakes. Only you can discover that for yourself within. So this is all about growing our awareness so our self-awareness becomes a more fully cognizant human being and understanding at a fundamental core level what our desires are, because one part wants to do one thing and another part something else. We swear to stay married to one person, but before realizing what other desires are within us, we say we want to take on a certain hobby, but then the next day we do something else. We're fickle and indecisive, and to work in this chakra is also to become a spiritual warrior, because you have to learn to fight against yourself and your natural impulses. It's a constant struggle, especially when we first begin. This is really why the symbolism of the fight between good and evil has manifested throughout all teachings, fairy tales, stories, and superhero movies. A good example would be Neo and Agent Smith from The Matrix. This common theme is just a reflection of this aspect of war within us. And remember, Neo never actually defeats Agent Smith. Agent Smith represents the ego, but Neo just becomes infinitely more stronger by fighting him. It's not that we necessarily need to win every battle, but that we become stronger and more formidable as a result. So it's not really healthy to see the ego as this filthy, sinful, evil thing. It can actually help us, and it can be a spiritual teacher. A guru in a way. An evil guru, you could say, by showing us all the evil within us, so we have to use it in this way, and we have to be willing to face it, to fight it, as a sort of worthy opponent in a great game of chess. This is actually what chess means on a spiritual level, to be calculative and strategic with winning the battle for our soul. And recall how Agent Smith is not just one, but he multiplies into many. As we've been exploring, the ego is many a legion and pops up everywhere as we continue on the path. And as we understand our own psychology much more deeply, we begin to reveal the ego's secrets, and we slowly gain the capacity to not talk to ourselves or think in a limited linguistic way like the ego does, but we communicate with ourselves through much more refined intelligence that transcends ordinary egoic logic. So relatedly, this is also to do with telepathy, because we start to understand why and how we operate and how the ego operates. And how does the ego operate? Does it operate with higher consciousness? It operates as a sort of foreign entity, a sort of mechanical creature, a robot. It's our own artificial intelligence within us. And thus, to understand this ego with all of its psychological voices, with all of its own logic and reasonings, we also begin to understand how to communicate much more efficiently in a more refined and direct way. Because through direct understanding we can synthesize all of this logic of the ego. This is literally what it means to be intelligent. But we'll see more directly how this applies to telepathy towards the end. Right now, our solar plexus chakra is using lower forms of logic that are not aligned with universal truth and consciousness, and as we balance the center of intelligence, we purify our logic, our reason, and we're able to use it much more efficiently. It's basically like taking a slow, semi-useful dump truck and transforming it into technology that is extremely advanced, like turning it into a UFO. So this is how we can understand that our ego is not something totally evil. It's just completely out of control like an ugly monster. And yes, as we've been exploring, it is necessary to kill even cruel and aggressive parts of our ego, to really get it under control. Those parts that are just disgusting, unnecessary, that make our life and the lives of others literally a living hell. We accumulate jealousy, hate, violence, and all of that kind of ugliness and grotesqueness, and we work on the most destructive parts first and then we refine from there. Remember, the lower chakras are a sort of gross laboratory deep down within. We refine the material slowly and just keep working, and as we do, we begin to change, we begin to transform our ego. We transform it from a miserable, petty, bitter monster to a good, upright, virtuous, kind character. As we can see ourselves as conscious awareness, and there are some black animals who are running wild and rampant and who are currently leading and controlling our lives, trying to fulfill all of its desires and chaotic behaviors, leaving us to eat the dirt and dust behind them, bitterly struggling to gain any form of control over them. But if we continue to strive and to get some form of control, you can see that the animals eventually become more white, more purified, and as they become well behaved, we are able to become their master, instead of them mastering us, and eventually towards the top, as they simply follow us like good peaceful animals, we can use them to fly and ascend into the heavens. You might be wondering, we should use the ego? Yes, very much so. As we explored earlier, the ego is a necessary aspect of our being which we use to walk the path and interact with the world and others. To not have some form of purified ego at the very least would essentially mean not to be human in this human experience. So the spiritual path is very much always labeled as something very good, or we would have to become like good gods. But God doesn't mean good or bad, it means beyond good and bad, both of them. So really, in order to transcend on the path, we don't just become lords of the heavens, but we also become lords of the underworld too. All the spiritual masters, all the ascended beings, such as Jesus, Buddha, etc., they all have command over hell, over demons too. They're not just eating grapes and being served by nice angels and things like that, they also rule the underworld as well. There is a Buddhist temple at the top of a mountain in South Korea which has demons under the Buddha. This represents his domination over negative dimensions of nature. So as it says in the Bible, Matthew 18:3, and said, "Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." This is about transforming the monstrous ego with all of its vices, wickedness, negative states of mind, of consciousness, and transforming, transmuting, and converting it back into a state of innocence, a state of purity like little children. This is how we gain clarity in our life, by cleaning all of that muck, or else we won't be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. In chakra and kundalini terms, that means not being able to transcend or ascend past the level of our solar plexus chakra because of our own egoic monsters which reside there, which is not an innocent little child yet. So how do we transform it? As we saw in the previous episode, we stop nourishing it with its appetites, desires, and passions, and by doing that it not only dies and experiences an ego death, as some will say, but it becomes smaller and more beautiful and more agreeable. It begins to serve us, its master, instead of us serving it. In Christian terms, we understand the ego as Satan. Thus the solar plexus chakra is also where the ego lives, and so in the book of Revelation with the solar plexus chakra, representing the church of Pergamos, it says, "To the angel of the church in Pergamos, he which hath the sharp sword with two edges, I know your works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is." The sharp sword with two edges points towards the fact that we can use this church as an energy center to will to do good, or to do evil. So as you see, we need an ego, but a refined, upright, and disciplined one. In order to operate in the world and be a medium through which we interact with our ascension, we learn to become a master puppeteer, learning to move our puppet with strings, controlling our thoughts, deeds, desires, and body in a disciplined, upright way. Similarly, the solar plexus chakra is also commonly related to the god Agni, the god of fire, which restores our spiritual powers. Notice how this god is riding a goat or a ram. With this animal with its horns being commonly related to Satan or the ego throughout various spiritual schools, now remember that we've got all of this ego within us, taking its own will and desires to think and feel in certain ways, and remember how we visualized that we're in a lake of emotion in the previous episode, and how certain negative emotions would look, which are impure, dirty, destructive, and not life-giving. But stagnant, dry, or rotten is within our solar plexus chakra, where our ego or unconscious will creates these emotions, these forms of water, and these negative forms of water. These emotions lead to illnesses and diseases because negative emotion never feels good in the body. Notice after you've had a bout of anger how you feel. It's horrible. It leads to disease and becomes disease in the body, because of what are literally pollutions in the body. All of the pollutions on the earth now is simply an external reflection, an external manifestation, of our inner spiritual pollution within our inner worlds accordingly. To balance and master this solar plexus chakra is to master what kind of thoughts and emotions we will have, And if we have a bit of common sense about us, we will never choose to feel any kind of disease. Hence, this chakra is often related to overcoming illnesses and leading to perfect health and longevity. This is known as the Patala Siddhi. A siddhi is a Sanskrit word that means to have a spiritual power or ability, usually obtained from yoga, and the Patala Siddhi means the yogi becomes a master of desire, meaning he's fully able to control or destroy desires or sorrows and diseases as he pleases, because he understands them energetically, directly. And to be a master of this will is also to understand how to manifest anything, whether it be other spiritual powers or physical wealth. But can we use this power to just do absolutely anything we want, even if it's evil, morally wrong, or materialistic? Well, this is how the spiritual path and the universe works in a beautiful way, to only be of goodness and uprightness, because as we explored before, in order to achieve mastery and desire and manifestation, we have to become responsible people and not black magicians. So as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. An ancient proverb, by the way. It's not from Spider-Man, if that came to your mind. When taken seriously, it's a very significant piece of truth. So to put it simply, the universal laws work in a way that if you use your power for evil, they'll eventually be taken away from you because of the limiting karma that you create for yourself. So let's get on to some practices. But before I do, let me explain how this solar plexus chakra is connected to telepathy. This is the Gnostic understanding. The solar plexus chakra receives impressions, mental impressions of people's thoughts and emotions. In other words, this chakra is an antenna for receiving signals from other people. We don't receive thoughts through our intellectual center. That would be sort of ridiculous, because as we explored in the previous episodes, the intellectual center isn't fast enough, nor is it capable of sensing a lot of data at the same time. So this solar plexus chakra is a receptor, a receiver, and our pineal gland is the transmitter, the sender, where we send our thoughts to others and into the world. The solar plexus receives mental waves from people who think of us, and then those waves pass into our brain. This happens all the time, as we just don't notice it or haven't gained the discernment between external receptive signals and internal fantasies. And of course, those impressions we receive can easily turn into skewed subjective fantasies when we see them in our mind's eye and when they travel to the brain. And since they're coming from the solar plexus region within us, we think that we're thinking them yourself, but we're not. The solar plexus is our telepathic brain of emotions. Hence, telepathy, as discussed previously, is communication on a deeper level, on an emotional level, emotional data. When a person is saying one thing, but you can feel if they actually mean something else completely if you are honing in on this chakra. If we were just animals who purely relied on the words someone said, we would never come to any truth of what people actually mean. Another example would be being able to know what someone's going to say before they say it. In the context of realizing this ability, in the context of astral projection, it isn't too important to understand the technicalities. This is just something that naturally arises and that we become aware of as we refine our inner state, and especially as we become more silent within. And when we achieve this silence, then we start to become more sensitive to these vibrations of other people. So let's get on to the practical part. As for the main sound, the main vowels that I'm teaching here for each chakra, and we saw the root chakra mantra is the sound of S, and the sacral chakra is the sound of the letter M. Now the solar plexus chakra is the vowel U, the letter U, but we don't say, you like, you or me. We just phonetically vocalize the pure sound of the letter U, which is, not, oh but you. As taught previously, you can keep your awareness in the solar plexus region, and you can visualize a yellow circular disc spinning clockwise. You don't have to visualize anything, you don't have to keep awareness there, but it is there, if you would like to exercise your attention more thoroughly. We have some other very powerful mantras here that we're going to see, but there's also one very basic thing we should strive to do every day as well for this chakra. Get sunlight. This chakra is the element of fire, and the sun is the greatest source of spiritual fire that we can soak into our system. The element of fire is just wonderful in almost every way for us. Everyone likes the sun. Just go into any usually miserable city and see what the people are like. When it's sunny, everyone is smiling and happy. Perhaps you can't see the contrast in that in your own life because you live in a sunny country all the time. So perhaps people are more angry there. But for me, I can see the contrast very well because I grew up in Detroit. So fire and the sun are wonderful. We need it because it empowers us, and it is life-affirming, and gives life to every part of our energy system too. Our inner element of earth needs the sun, so does water, so does air. So accordingly, we have another particular mantra for this chakra. It is called Biju mantra. Biju means seed in Sanskrit, and there is actually a Bija mantra for every chakra, which you can see on the screen now. However, we're not teaching them here, and I'll explain why. But we make an exception for the solar plexus because the solar rays and the element of fire, as I've said, is just something our whole system needs, and it is also related to awakening the heart center. Remember, the sun is the center of our soul system. As above, so below. Our heart is the center that gives life to the whole of the physical body, our inner solar system, and the sun and heart are also intimately tied to the zodiac sign Leo, which is depicted by the fiery, brave-hearted lion. So the heart self empowers us, which we really need in order to walk this path. The reason why we generally don't use seed mantras for the other chakras, which of course you absolutely can if you like, is that seed mantras relate to giving power to our chakras. They are fuel for the chakras. This is different to what we want to achieve on a deeper level. What we want to achieve on a deeper level is to transform and heal our actual chakras directly so that they are aligned with divinity. You see, our chakras are currently dormant, imbalanced, or malfunctioning, and we need to fix them first before we put fuel in them. Bij mantras don't necessarily fix them, so if our chakras are inverted or asleep, stimulating the chakras with bij power, seed power, will have little or poor effect. Instead, we want to transform and fix the chakra itself. Remember, as we explored in the first episode, our chakras are already active, just in a negative way. We don't need much seed power because we already have our seed, which is our sexual energy, which is always being generated. So if you're maybe older and you feel you're lacking in virility and sexual energy, you can use these seed mantras actually, which will help you invigorate your system and healing your etheric and physical body a bit more. You can relate all this to having a car. If the engine is not working, the chakra is not working, or other parts are broken, why would you keep putting fuel in it? Putting seed in it? Or worse, think about who is driving the car. Driving the chakra. If the ego is driving the car and you give it fuel, then this is obviously not desired either. The main mantras being taught in this series are intended to fix your car back into a pure state. Then your natural energy will do the rest. Again, you can certainly use the seed mantras if you keep in mind the purpose of chanting them. Probably best to use them later in your practice. So simply put, this seed mantra for the solar plexus is for giving us more fire, more willpower for our ego to get off its lazy behind and actually do something about spirituality. The bija mantra for the solar plexus is Ram, and notice how this chakra is related to the god Agni, the god of fire, who is riding a ram. So it is pronounced by either rolling the R or not, and if you're comfortable with it, you may invoke the god Agni who exists within you to help you awaken this great fiery chakra. It's said that if we achieve to be able to see this god within deep meditation, we will see him with a very bright aura, and the aura will also produce majestic music similar to how the element of fire gives life to all the other chakras. It also does to our spiritual bodies too, such as the etheric body and astral body, giving us health and spiritual realization. So the fire is the basis of our spiritual experience, and other deities that you may resonate with that are commonly linked to this chakra are Vishnu and the goddess Lakshmi as well. And for people with Christian preferences, you can focus on the crucifix, symbolizing the fiery death or transformation of Christ and the ego. Remember that on the crucifix above Jesus' head, or Yeshua's head, it says Enri, which is actually another fire-related mantra. Enri is a Latin acronym which stands for Ignis Natura Renovata Integra, which means, nature is completely renewed by fire. In other words, our inner nature is rebirthed anew through the power of fire and its rebirthing transformative qualities. Notice how the name of the god Agni is similar to Ignis. Agni actually has the root meaning of ignite, hence why the god Agni is not just a god of fire, but the igniter of fire. Now we have another mantra for the chakra called Sua, S-U-A. This mantra calls upon the fire of Kundalini in the root to awaken with the S part. Then U, as we saw, is the main vowel for this chakra, and A is actually related to two elements, the element of air and also of Akash, because what does fire need? It needs oxygen in the air. Thus the A vowel is related to the lungs, and also an extra bonus here. The mantra A can be used for a practice in and of itself if you are working towards recalling your past lives, because we need the element of Akash, which is a subtle etheric element. To be able to recall our past lives, the Akash is where we go to and come back from through life and death, and connecting with that helps us to recall past lives, and so using the Sua mantra can also help bring heat and air and spiritual life into our own Akash. Now to go into an even more powerful mantra, and especially if you want to focus on and invoke the deity of Agni for assistance, you can use the mantra Ramsua, which is a combination of the two above. I'm not just randomly putting them together. This is what was taught in the Gnostic tradition. So clearly this is a powerful mantra if you want to awaken this chakra. It has the Bijya seed mantra, as well as the Sua mantra with its combination of the main vowels to boost it into awakening and transformation. Another practice similar to the previous episode where we visualized fire to burn out certain negative impressions on our consciousness. Well, in essentially the same way we can actually use the element of fire in physical life by gazing at fire, or more specifically a candle, This can actually be very healing to merge with the fire and disintegrate old patterns or traumas. So we simply get a white candle to symbolize purity, and we sit comfortably in front of the candle. And we simply meditate as normal, except we keep the eyelids slightly open, gazing at the flame, admiring it, contemplating the element of fire in life, not thinking, just really consciously seeing it, noticing its different shades of colors, the aura and heat it creates around it, the stillness of it, and how it dances. It can be very beautiful. And so as we gaze, we fixate on it as our anchor of attention. And when a thought comes in, we can visualize or send that thought gently into the flame to be burned and dissolved, and we continue to do that with any disturbances that arise from within that keep recurring. You must keep going at it, sending them all into the fire. You can come to a very profound stillness through this. It's a wonderful type of meditation, and I recommend it to everyone. It's somewhat easier to meditate like this too at times because we're so used to quickly daydreaming when we close our eyes. But if we keep them open, it easily keeps us grounded in our here and now physical environment. This also hugely increases your concentration span. Most people can't focus on one thing without breaking their attention for more than 30 seconds. But if you can attain a long length of deep attention, your whole life is going to change. Apply this kind of attention to every moment in your life, no matter where you are, and you will experience life in beautifully transcendental ways that you never thought were possible, which words cannot express. If you're interested in astral projection too, doing this will also increase your ability to stay in an experience for much longer than usual due to your newfound strength and concentration, instead of just going into dreams and getting lost in dreams while you're trying to be conscious in the astral. And as you may have wondered, this candle-gazing meditation can of course be combined with any of the mantras we've just discussed, or focusing on the deities or archetypes that we just discussed. We should also incorporate into our daily lives stretching our spine, particularly for this chakra. Simply stand up straight on your feet, place your hands on your waist, and rotate your hips in a clockwise motion. This will help you to keep the elasticity in your spinal column. You can also, while standing up straight, vertically raise your arms up, reaching for the sky. Inhale and bend backwards as much as comfortably possible. Then go all the way forward while exhaling, touching, or trying to touch, your feet while keeping the legs straight. And really, any way that you can stretch the muscles around the spine and higher back will help to allow arising impurities to find their natural flow and release. You see, there's a certain struggle between our solar plexus and heart. In a big sense, you may have noticed how powerful this chakra is and its potential, and how it's the source of many spiritual powers and material powers. Not just telepathy is involved, but clairvoyance, clairaudience, and other psychic powers are attained from the fuel and willpower of the solar plexus energy center. This chakra is more like half inferior, half superior. It can be either depending on our intentions, and hence why it's very common for people to abuse their powers. Why do they do this? Those people who are developed in this chakra but abuse it or use their powers in a wrong way, it's because they're still stuck in this chakra and have not yet developed or ascended to the heart chakra. And many struggle to ascend higher because of the top part of this solar plexus chakra, which is guarded by our biggest fears. This has been known in the occult as the guardian of the threshold, because at the top of this chakra is sort of a little gate, the threshold of the ego, you could say. And if we pass through that gate, we can reach the first and most important superior chakra, the heart chakra, which is essentially the guide, the direction for our solar plexus chakra, which has all this infinite potential. The heart chakra will show us what we should be manifesting and which direction we should go. But if we want to ascend to that, then we will usually be tested in some way by the fires of our biggest fears, temptations, and our general greatest personal struggles in order to see if we're truly ready to start living from a higher state of consciousness from the heart. But of course we shall go in depth into the heart chakra on the next episode, and see you in the heart chakra episode.